Bore da, and welcome to Talking Wales. Very lucky today to be joined by Anthony Slaughter, who is the leader of the Green Party in Wales. And you're also standing as a candidate in South Cardiff, am I correct?
Yes, come on. Cardiff South and Penarth, yeah.
Cardiff South and Penarth. So welcome to the final Talking Wales before the general election vote on Thursday, this Thursday, the 4th of July. So just before we start the programme, I'll just give you a quick introduction to explain what Talking Wales is and what we're trying to achieve. We're building a community and we want you to be part of it. A news and information service designed to keep Welsh citizens informed, a space where issues that matter and impact our daily lives can be discussed, developing ideas and challenging those in power, sharing news and information via digital radio, YouTube, social media and online, using clear, understandable language on the platforms you use most often. It'll be owned by you, our members, serving all of Wales and its people wherever they are in the world. Join us on our journey and help us create a better Wales. So Anthony, thank you again for joining us today. So to start off with, the general election campaign, how has it been from your perspective?
On a personal perspective, it's been very good from the Green Party, Wales Green Party point of view. It's been very positive, lots of really good interactions and engagements, and real appetite to hear what we've got to say. On a wider, more national level, it's been a slightly frustrating election. There's a lot of stuff, there's several elephants in the room that just don't seem to be coming up. Obviously, climate change and nature emergency is the big one that is just almost absent from all the debates, especially the televised debates. But also Brexit, lots of talk about rebuilding the economy from other parties, but ignoring that elephant in the room. And also, really frustratingly, Gaza seems to have dropped off the radar. Whenever it is raised in the public debate, it seems to be glossed over. And also a sense, I think it was the IFS that used the phrase, a conspiracy of silence from the major parties. I mean, talking about their financial plans and not really backing them up. So I think there's a sense of frustration that this could and should be a moment of an election of change. Now, the Tories are gone after 14 years, yet it feels almost anticlimactic because of this lack of any real offer of hope and change. So I get a real sense, as I say, when I talk to people about our policies and our stances, there's real interest and keen to engage, but there is a sense of apathy out there as well, and I do worry about a low turnout. And another aspect of this election that's concerned me is the way it's being covered. I mean, I think we've got a lot of public support for this, for BBC Wales to include reform on the televised Wales Leaders debate and not the Greens, was a real democratic deficit, really, a real blow to the voters of Wales. I mean, Wales Green Party standing across Wales in all 32 seats, our largest ever campaign. We have elected representatives across Wales, but to choose to ignore us, and then the argument that comes back is always because of the polling, and there's an counter argument that will reform the polling so well because you keep platforming them at every opportunity. So a real mix. It's been really short and focused. It's been galvanizing. I've been really impressed by how our teams have come together. So yeah, mixed bag really in response to how it's gone.
It's interesting because I've been looking at polling for the the subject people consider most important when they're going to vote. Health is number one, economy second, cost of living, which is linked to the economy, is third, with immigration fourth. I was surprised that education was down as something like 10th, and the environment was low down on the list as well. Whereas, especially when you speak to younger people, the two things that that they talk about, that they want to discuss most, are the environment and mental health. And it's interesting, how, I don't know, is the narrative because it's being pushed by the main political parties? What do you think that sits behind this drive to have those topics covered?
I think firstly highlight another gap in this election, the lack of young voices not being heard and platformed. I'm really proud of how many young Green candidates we've got. I think, yeah, it's, as you say, cost of living crisis, it sort of focuses people's attention, people's minds. They, quite rightly, when they're struggling to put food on the table, struggling to pay bills, that is a major focus. What we try to do is point out, no, we have solutions to that. We have fully costed manifesto. NHS is a key priority for most people. It does, I have to say, it comes up first on the doorstep almost every time. But what we have to link, I struggle with those polls because I've seen the polls as well that have the environment and climate change low down, but it does come up. People do ask about it. And especially, as you say, at hustings, young people are very keen to talk about it. So I think focusing on the cost of living crisis and how it's impacting people is why you've got the major parties offering this sort of magic money tree, this wish list of how they're going to fix everything without changing everything. And again, it's the Institute of Fiscal Studies pointing out that under Labour and Conservative proposals at the moment, you've still got £18 billion worth of cuts baked in to come. So austerity isn't over, austerity is going to get worse. But key for us, what we put forward in our manifesto is the fact that all these crises are interlinked. So our solutions, our proposals for tackling the climate change emergency will make people's lives better in the day-to-day reality. So things like retrofitting homes, making it cheaper and easier to heat your home, cheaper costs for energy, tackling the sewage in our water, in our rivers and seas, cheap, sustainable public transport, reliable public transport, all these things which will have impacts on the very real crisis facing people on a day-to-day basis, but also do help tackle the climate crisis.
Are you surprised that, when we talk about things like, insulating homes, this is something that's been discussed for, I remember, going back 2 decades of it being discussed, and yet there's been inaction. What's stopping governments, because we've had a Labour government and then subsequently 14 years of a Conservative government. What's stopping these things from happening, do you think?
A lack of political will is the blunt answer. You're absolutely right. These things have been talked about for a very long time. The solutions have been known for a long time. But we've got politics in this short-term electoral cycle. No one's looking further than 4 years ahead, 5 years ahead. I mean, we look at an example of the state of the railways across the United Kingdom, and it's just in a complete mess. No one remembers John Major. No one remembers that actually comes from a decision that John Major made. So politicians operate in this short life cycle. There's a lack of political will. There's a pushback from businesses. And these things, 2050, 2040, 2045, these dates seem so long away for a long time that people could kick the ideas into the long grass. But they're around the corner now. And that highlights the problem with the transition that has to happen now. Suddenly has to be so much sharper and quicker than it could have been, which is what impacts on industries, why you see the turmoil over Tata Steel, the disputes in the agricultural sector, because politicians have refused to face up to what needs to be done and be honest with people. And that's where I'm very proud of what we've put forward. It's bold and it's honest with the scale of the problem, the crises, whether it's fixing the NHS, tackling the climate change, but also is honest about the resources needed for that and how they would have to be raised.
And just from a UK perspective, obviously, you have one MP in Westminster who has, I think, made an impact for an individual MP, and I believe it's Sian Berry who's now going to be standing in Brighton, but it does look like potentially the Brighton may be added to by Bristol and another couple of seats. What do you think that breakthrough? Because obviously having one MP is a challenge, isn't it? But having a group of MPs, it does make a big difference. Is that something that the Green Party, sort of in England and Wales, are looking at and discussing?
It's a very big moment for us, and we've got to pay tribute to Caroline, the difference that she's made as one MP in Parliament over the last decade or so. But yeah, we're aiming for, and I think we quite confidently can say we will at least quadruple our number of MPs in Westminster. We'll get Carla Denyer elected in Bristol across the river, Adrian Ramsey in Waveney Valley, and Ellie Chowns in North Herefordshire, all looking very, very good. I'm not going to be complacent with a week to go, but I'm looking forward to seeing a group of Green MPs in Westminster. And as you say, that will be a game changer. And we know there's going to be a Labour majority. It's going to be a Labour government. So it's really important that we have those stronger, bolder voices in Westminster. And that will be the strength of a Green group of MPs, pushing Labour to be braver and bolder. And here in Wales, as I said, we're standing across the whole country, 32 seats. The aim is to get our biggest ever vote in Wales, our biggest ever vote share, which I'm very confident we will do, because we see this election here in Wales as the starting point for our Senedd campaign, where we are aiming to, and I'm confident we will, get elected Green representation at the Senedd in 2026.
Yeah, and we will be going on to discuss that in a bit. But just from just Wales, as a country, do you think, has it received the attention it deserves on a national level, not just the media, but also by the political parties? What's your views on that?
It's not good enough. It's got better, I have to say. It's still quite poor, but it has got better. Welsh voices have been heard, and interestingly, I think devolution has suddenly, people become aware of devolution and the impacts as other parties have been working on their manifestos. Most of them are pretty poor on devolution, but there's a growing acknowledgement that it's there and it's real and it's part of our political system. And I'd like to see more. There's a shocking lack of ambition and knowledge from some Welsh politicians in the other parties on what devolution is and how it works. And there's those tensions on Welsh issues, such as we believe in the immediate devolution of policing and justice, and it's Welsh Labour policy, Welsh Labour Party policy. Welsh Senedd members talk about that. But then you see the Shadow Secretary of State for Wales, Joe Stevens, sort of laughingly dismissing it. So it's getting better, but there is a long way to go, really, I think. And I think it's why I'm really encouraged to see the growth of independent media outlets such as yours and some of the many others springing up in Wales, because we need proper political discussion in Wales, and we're not really getting that from the main broadcasters.
Yeah, so again, just from national media, giving a platform to Wales. We've seen Rhun ap Iorwerth, for example, from Plaid Cymru having some presence on those platforms. And as you say, within Wales itself, the fact that the Greens weren't included in that discussion, I think it's fair to say that maybe it was within a bit of a Twitter bubble, but there was a lot of concern and anger about that, because when you do have elected representatives at sort of local levels and you're competing in all the seats, then it's important that people get to hear the messages. Just from a personal point of view, I watched part of the leaders' debate with the co-leader of the Green Party, and to be honest, it was the first time I'd ever seen him. So, for somebody like me who is sort of engaged politically, I've heard him on the radio previously, but like I say, he appeared and I didn't, I wouldn't have known who he was. And it is important, for all political parties. We discuss people like Nigel Farage. He is, a recognised face, and he has got, sort of a profile, but he has had a lot of coverage on television. So I think that is something, obviously, we're trying to address. The fact that we've got you on today, I think hopefully goes to show that we want to hear from across the political spectrum. So from just looking ahead, then obviously Thursday's the day of the voting. You say you're concerned about turnout and apathy. I think, again, do you think there's a risk, that people are just going to be apathetic and just think that Labour have won and they're not going to vote? Are the Conservatives, are they going to be impacted by people who aren't happy with the Conservative Party at the moment? That clearly, a lot of people aren't, and then they won't be going out to vote. Because I think one of the big successes of the Conservatives in previous elections is their ability to mobilise and get their vote out. How do you see Thursday panning out from a voting perspective?
Well, I hope I'm wrong about the low turnout, but it is worrying. There's various elements to it, aren't there? There'll be people who don't vote because they've lost all faith in the political system. They see scandal after scandal, whether it's the gambling or Vaughan Gethings donations. And then there are the people who will take the result for granted and stay at home because they assume, probably correctly, what the outcome will be. So the message from us for this election is your vote really matters in this election. Your vote can really count, because as one of the smaller parties, we quite often in the past have been squeezed. We've had 14 years of this corrupt and cruel Conservative government, and in past elections, people have been really scared of letting them back in, and they get squeezed. They get that message from Labour that you've got to vote Labour to get the Tories out. Well, this time we're arguing that just isn't the case in almost every constituency. So people can actually vote, and we've got to get people back in the habit of knowing and believing that their vote matters. So a vote for the Greens in this election, you can vote with your heart, and you can vote with vote for what you believe in, and send a strong signal to the other parties that these issues count and matter, and they need to start addressing them to sort of reverse this democratic deficit.
And what's your views on proportional representation? Because I think that we've seen from a Wales perspective, Wales has never voted Conservative majority. Yet we've had Conservative governments in Westminster, and there's potentially Labour could have super majority. They could have 200-300 majority with around 40% of the vote. What's your view on that? And do you think there's any likelihood of the voting system changing?
Yeah, the voting system is completely unfair. I mean, we had in 2015, Greens got 1.1 million votes and got 1 MP. I mean, that can't be right. So we fully support proportional representation. It's a cornerstone policy for us. We want to see all elections run fairly with a proper system of proportional representation. But we also have to work within the system as it is, and we have to succeed within the system as it is if we're going to get that change, which is why we've focused so sharply on this general election and are going to increase the number of Green MPs. And we've got the welcome shift towards a more proportional Senate election system, but not the sort of proportional representation we would see as full and fair. It's still very heavily weighted against smaller parties, and that's no surprise because turkeys don't vote for Christmas. But we are going to use that opportunity. As you said, we'll talk about it. It is a chink for us to get in to the Senate, get elected to Green representation. But we need every elections, and deeply frustrating in Wales to see the Welsh government pass this sort of opportunity over to the local authorities instead of just starting proportional representation for council elections, local authorities across Wales. Make it an option for the local authorities to choose themselves. So it's a gesture towards proportional representation, but again, no turkey's going to vote for Christmas. We've seen a couple of Green Party councils that have brought forward motions to call for proportional representation, but we don't expect any council to adopt them. And on Westminster level, we saw Keir Starmer the other day. It's Labour Party policy. Labour Party members overwhelmingly support proportional representation. But we saw Keir Starmer on television the other night just bluntly dismissing it. It's not going to happen. This is a shortcoming. Labour can sense power now, so why would they give it up? And it's a mistake on their part, because one term, 2 terms, they'll be out again. So we really do need to push for that. And that's another reason to get a strong Green vote, to increase that message that we want a fairer voting system.
So come Friday, how do you see Westminster looking? What do you think the makeup will be?
I think there will be a Labour majority, hopefully not too big. We will have a significantly increased Green Party presence. I think it's going to be shocking how few Conservatives there will be. I'd like to hope there aren't any Reform MPs. It's such a mixed blessing, isn't it? Just after 14 years, we're seeing the end of this Conservative government. And as I said earlier, it feels so anticlimactic. It feels like a changing of the guard with no real change.
It has been changed, because one of the things, obviously, Vox Pops is something that's popular on radio and television, and having been listening to a lot of news coverage over the last 3 weeks and hearing quite a few Vox Pops, it's surprising the lack of support there is really for any of the political parties. People are genuinely sort of apathetic. There's I think Labour, as you say, are likely to win with a large majority, but I'm finding it surprising how sort of little sort of appetite and desire there is. But with Labour potentially coming in with a large majority on Friday, how do you see sort of Westminster government panning out for the next 5 years?
Well, it's got to be better than what's gone before, or at least worse, at least. It will be really interesting to see. It'll be the debate within the Labour Party that determines everything then, I think, because we talk about apathy, and it's not just the public. What I'm seeing locally here in Cardiff and South Wales, Labour Party activists aren't engaged. And the Labour Party activists aren't coming out. They're not inspired. They're on the verge of a massive victory, and they don't feel excited. They don't feel... So there's going to be that tension, and hopefully there'll be a rebalancing of the power in Labour. If the sort of new Labour imitation Starmerites have complete control of it, then I don't think it's going to be a very inspiring parliament, and it's going to feed that disillusionment with politics.
Yeah, because the message that we've been hearing from the Labour Party on a UK level and from a Wales level is, having two parties at both ends of the M4 working in collaboration instead of against each other is going to deliver change, and you would imagine that there would be genuine change, because I think particularly under Mark Drakeford we had quite a progressive sort of Labour government in Cardiff with a Conservative government who just weren't interested in engaging. Do you think that change of dynamic is going to have an impact on Wales?
To some extent, but again, referring to Joe Stevens' attitude, the Parliamentary Labour Party's attitude towards devolution, there's a reluctance, and there's already been the restructuring funds. There's been so many backtrackings from the Parliamentary Labour Party that I think it's going to be quite frustrating for Welsh Labour. It would have been a very different dynamic if it was Mark Drakeford or someone similar still as the leader of Welsh Labour, still as First Minister. It's going to be a very strange first year, if he lasts that long, having such a lame duck First Minister on this end of the M4. Then cynically, I suppose, expect Welsh Government will get some money extra money in the next couple of years with an eye on the Senedd election. But it's got to be a better relationship than the one that Mark Drakeford had to suffer with being completely ignored by the Conservative government. But as I said, the people in charge, Keir Starmer in Westminster and Vaughan Gething in Cardiff Bay, doesn't inspire me with confidence.
So just let's say thinking ahead of that, because obviously during this campaign, the Vaughan Gething vote of no confidence, the discussion, the further revelations around the company who gave donations to his campaign to become leader of the Labour Party, and as a result, First Minister. It doesn't seem to have had an impact on Labour's overall vote in Wales. But after Thursday, when the electioneering has stopped, do you think that is going to have an impact on sort of Labour within Wales?
I think so. It does come up on the doorstep. Admittedly, on partly that bubble of people who do pay attention to politics, but it does come up, and it does feed into that horrible toxic attitude of "you're all the same." And I think what's striking about it, apart from the sort of to make such a mistake, to take that much money from someone with that record, then the sort of doubling down and refusing to acknowledge any mistake, that hasn't looked good. There's a discussion to be had, isn't there, about how long Vaughan Gething can stay First Minister. I mean, we've seen discussions that he will struggle to pass a budget. It's all very uncharted territory, and it's a mess that Welsh Labour have made for themselves, really.
And I'm just thinking of a Labour government as we're expecting on Friday, their commitments to sort of environmental change. There is going to be a substantial shift in attitude, I think, isn't there, towards the environment under Labour. Maybe not as much as some people would like, and I would imagine not as much as you would like. But how do you see that different change sort of being made from an environmental point of view compared with the Conservatives, who still have a lot of climate skeptics amongst their ranks and are still sort of appear to be beholden to the oil and petrol lobbying industry?
There'll definitely be a better narrative around. Yes, not dealing with climate skeptics is a start. Labour's commitment is questionable. We saw the U-turn on the 28 billion, but yeah, there's space, and opening up that space can only be good for parties such as ours, because it's an acknowledgement of the problem. And then we've got our Labour and Green MPs at Westminster pushing harder, pointing out when the government is backtracking or giving in to fossil fuel interests. So it'll definitely be a better space. But I think, Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, well, Climate Action website that rated the manifestos, and they rate Green Party's manifesto as very good on climate change, the Lib Dems as good, and Labour as poor. So there's still a long way for Labour to go, but you're right, absolutely right. It's a step in the right direction. It opens that space, and we can get our strong green message out there a lot easier.
A statistic that I'm going to share now that not many people will probably know. On Friday, it'll be 671 days until the next Senate election in May 2026. It was interesting. I don't know if you saw, the polling that's been done in Wales specifically. Looking at the general election polling, it mirrored quite a, what was being seen across the UK and in England. But when it came to the Senedd polling, it looked markedly different. Once Thursday's out of the way, how do you see the next 671 days of campaigning for that Senedd election?
Pretty full on. Yeah, we're well aware of how close it is, and that's why this general election campaign is quite a good sort of starting point for us, because everything that we're putting in place for this election, the work won't stop. We're determined to get that green representation, and it'll be so different going into a Senedd election, having Carla as an MP across the river, proving that Greens can win, and for us to be able to go out to the electorate confident, saying that you can vote Green in this election and you will get green representation. It'll be a welcome change from having to try to explain the second vote system to people, which was just impossible on the doorstep. So I think it'll be a very key time, and I think that interest that's mentioned earlier, the growing interest or awareness of devolved issues and the future of Wales, future of the United Kingdom in reality, will feed into a lot of the discussion and campaigning over the coming months. And yeah, 671 days, 671 more days of door knocking.
Yeah, but it's surprising. It's a relatively short space of time. Do you think that you post Thursday, when the attention will be, basically Labour will be far, they're going to be under the spotlight because they're going to be scrutinised like they've never been scrutinised before, and obviously there will be a honeymoon period. How do you think that the situation with Vaughan Gething and what's happening in Wales with Labour, how do you think that will impact on the Senedd elections?
I think it's going to change the narrative in Wales, because we've had that Labour dominance for so long, but they're showing signs of weakness now. They're showing signs of fallibility. They're not, and they've taken away that prop they've relied on. They can't blame the Conservatives in Westminster anymore as well. That's going to change the discussion. So I suppose, again, like I said about the UK Labour Party, it's going to depend on the internal wranglings within Welsh Labour. Does Vaughan Gething stay on? Does someone else take his place? That could shift it. I mean, from a purely party political perspective, going on to the Senedd election, the longer Vaughan stays in place, the better for us.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from a lot of the opposition parties, but clearly, having a situation like this, it's not good for Wales in the long term. So, what are your plans now between now and Thursday?
Just one last push out there, talking to as many voters as possible. I'll probably go over to Bristol one day as well, just to help there for the final, be part of that campaign. It's so exciting to see that campaign on the ground. But yeah, all the major events are out the way, all the organising. It's just as many conversations as we can have between now and Thursday, and just encourage people to get out there and use their vote and vote for something they believe in.
Excellent. Well, hopefully, if you're around on on Thursday night, you'll be able to join us. I'll just share you a little bit of an idea of what will be happening on Thursday. Yeah, so hopefully on Thursday, you'll be able to join us. So from 9 p.m. on, we'll be broadcasting to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. And you'll be able to join in and have that commentary on what's going on, because I think it's going to be an interesting night. So finally, just thank you, Anthony, for joining us. Good luck in your in the rest of your campaign, and it'll be interesting to see how the Greens fare across Wales, but particularly in those target seats in the rest of Wales. So until Thursday, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.